torture. Democrats used to be obsessed. During the war on terror, they talked about torture more than victory. Gitmo. The New York Times in 2005 said, "Please, Mr. President, just shut it down." They told us it was immoral. Dick Durbin, he called American soldiers Nazis.
If I read this to you and didn't tell you that it was an FBI agent describing what Americans had done to prisoners in their control, you would most certainly believe this must have happened by Nazis, Soviets in their gulags, or some mad regime, Pol Pot or others, that had no concern for human beings. Sadly, that's not the case. This was the action of Americans in treatment of their own prisoners.
Terrorists were victimized by American Nazis. Obama even built them $1 million soccer field.
$1 million on a soccer field? How do you spend $1 million doing the soccer field? You have a level piece of land. Throw them a ball, let them play soccer, if they have to play at all. Why are they playing soccer is my question.
Democrats gave terrorists soccer fields, free lawyers, constitutional rights. Eric Holder's law firm flew down to Gitmo to represent al-Qaeda pro bono. Are you getting enough time to pray? Is the food halal? Were the guards mean to you? If you answer the judge's questions correctly, you'll be on your way back to Jalalabad. But today, the former president of the United States, if he leaves court to go to the restroom, jail. If he calls the prosecutor corrupt, jail. If Trump moves or says anything, they scream jail. Did Khalid Sheikh Mohammed get slapped with a gag order? Trump's not even allowed to complain about the thermostat. It's a meat locker in there. He gets mocked for just closing his eyes. Donald Trump, been on the move his whole life. Golf, rallies, movement, action, sunlight, fresh air, freedom. This isn't lawfare, it's torture. They're making a 77-year-old man sit inside a dingy room for 8 hours straight, 4 days a week. And if he moves or talks, jail. How do you campaign for president if you can't move or talk?
I should be in Georgia now. I should be in Florida now. I should be in a lot of different places right now campaigning, and I'm sitting here. And this will go on for a long time. It's very unfair. And I should be allowed to campaign. And whoever heard of this, you got indicted for that? People in the court just said to me, I can't believe it. This is the case.
Today was the first time in history opening remarks were delivered in a criminal case against a former president. And you're not going to believe who delivered the opening remarks for the prosecution. Joe Biden's former acting associate attorney general. Wait a second. The media says Joe Biden has nothing to do with these prosecutions. Well, the number 3 guy at the Biden Justice Department parachuted in from D.C. into Alvin Bragg's office, revised this dead case, and just gave the opening statement to the jury. Matt Colangelo left the Biden administration and Frankensteined the personal matter years ago into 34 felony counts. The DA, Alvin Bragg, isn't even prosecuting the case. Biden's prosecutors are the ones prosecuting it. He just shows up to court with donuts. He hasn't argued in front of the judge once. He's just running on Dunkin'. For the next 6 weeks, Trump's in a torture chamber while Biden's prosecutor puts on a show trial. The star witness has a podcast and gets to rip Trump a new one. But Trump's gagged.
He put out another post that attacked me. I'll tell you how I would act on it if I was the judge. I would turn around and I would say, Donald, grab your toothbrush, grab your hair, and report to 500 Pearl Street, the criminal court, because you're spending the night in the tombs downstairs. And you'll spend every day. We'll bring you up for the trial, but afterwards, you're not going back to your triplex. You're going downstairs to the pokey until you learn how to act like a human being. That's what I would do.
The star witness who went to prison for lying is torturing Trump and bossing the judge around. And if Trump says anything, jail. Stormy Daniels, porn star, who extorted Trump and owes him 600 G's in legal fees, and her attorney, Michael Avenatti, in prison for extortion. Everyone in this case is either a liar, a porn star, or an extortionist, or all of the above. They're the faces of a case that's never been tried before in the history of the United States. Their argument, are you ready, is that Trump should have used donor money to stop a woman from shaking him down and then file the ransom with the FEC. That's a great way of protecting your family. No one would ever find out. This wasn't campaign business. This was personal. Campaign finance law specifically states candidates cannot use campaign funds for an expense that would exist anyway, even if it benefits the campaign. His lawyer paid Stormy, and after the campaign was over, the money was reimbursed and booked as a legal expense. You can't use campaign funds for personal matters, and now you can't use personal funds for personal matters during a campaign? So I guess the real crime is that Trump ran for president and beat Hillary. Prosecutors are arguing that it's a felony to quiet rumors about your personal life. A lot of presidents have made tabloid rumors disappear. Bill Clinton had a war room combating bimbo eruptions. Senator Ted Kennedy settled a case with Mary Jo's family after he left her for dead in the waters of Chappaquiddick. Alvin Bragg's arguing that Senator Kennedy should have used campaign funds and filed it with the FEC. That's nonsense. That was personal. Biden's former prosecutor told the jury today that Trump was trying to influence his own election. Oh, my gosh. Trump's defense attorney told the jury trying to influence the election is called democracy. There's nothing wrong with the non-disclosure agreement. Can you believe the Democrats still can't get over the 2016 election? It's now a crime to beat Hillary. The squad admitted it's political, saying, if Trump had just been impeached, we wouldn't have had to put him in jail.
I go back to the responsibility of Congress here, because had the Senate actually gone through with the impeachment of Donald Trump, we would not be in this situation.
The situation the squad's talking about is Biden losing. Former President Donald Trump polling ahead of Biden on every major issue. Look at that. Looking back, voters remember the Trump term, and stacked up against the Biden term, it's no contest. Voters should put aside all the chaos and just look at the Biden and Trump terms on paper. Gavin Newsom says the media is so hyper-focused on Trump, they're going to get him reelected again.
This is a guy that doesn't care if he is the hero or the heel. He just wants to be the star. And in so many ways, he gets what he wants. And that's the bright spotlight and focus. When we're focusing on him, I do worry electorally that he has a slight advantage. The consequential nature of a criminal trial is profound and outsized in some respect, but not more outsized than democracy, nor more outsized perhaps on what I thought was one of the biggest stories of the week, and that's Robert Kennedy Jr. getting on the ballot in Michigan. If he gets on more than just that one critical swing state of Michigan and gets on the ballot in some of these others, I think you have to take that very, very seriously.
Elections are won at the ballot box, not in the courtroom. But this year, Trump might win in both. So what do you do when you're down? Republicans are going to pull pregnant women over and make them pee on a stick.
We're almost there. You're going to make it.
Trump Republicans want to criminalize young Alabama women who travel for reproductive care.
Miss, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle, take a pregnancy test.
Stop them.
And once you have them scared, bring in Hollywood to help sell it.
The people that I've talked to and everybody that I have say he's as sharp as a tack. He's fine. We all have an issue with memories. As we get older, we forget names, something. He's overcome a stutter in his life, and sometimes he might. But let's just say that his entire cabinet, including his vice president, everybody in his cabinet, would be more than happy to work with him again in the next term.
All these people who meet Biden privately keep saying he's sharp as a tack. Weird, right? Because he doesn't act sharp in public. It's like the same thing they said about Hillary. Behind the scenes, she's so funny. She's so loose and relatable. They trotted out another actor to sell you that Trump hates blacks.
When we protested the killing of George Floyd, he was advocating for the military to shoot us in the streets. he's made it clear throughout his life that he believes black people are inferior. Like he believes that to his core, in his bones. When you hear some of the stray comments he makes, he clearly believes in a genetic hierarchy of humanity and is racially determined. So he is a tried and true, like, dyed-in-the-wool racist.
They're trying to sell you a script that they wrote but doesn't exist. Black women are diving into Trump's arms at Chick-fil-A, John Legend. Have you seen that one? Or, John, have you seen Biden say black cannibals ate his uncle? I mean, that's someone who believes in a genetic hierarchy. That's not someone who's that sharp.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.